To all our brothers, sisters, men, and women in Beijing, can you show us some support? Show some support. Beijing has over 20 million people. Thanks for the effort. If you show some support and boost this first wave of box office, we'll be set. I thank you all.
Sis, I'm right here in Beijing. Why don't you ask friends from other places to show support? What should I do, sis? If it didn't cost money, I'd really love to show support. It's not that I can't afford 50 yuan for a ticket.
Friends, who would have thought that this request for support by Han Hong, the big sister of the Chinese music scene, for Feng Xiaogong, the former king of New Year films, would become the most expensive and tragic box office disaster in the history of Chinese cinema in 2024? Right after Han Hong spoke, this blockbuster I Know Who You Are, which featured half of the entertainment industry, like Lei Jiayan, Huga, and Zheng Hanyu, saw its daily box office plummet off a cliff, dropping from 20 million a day all the way down to just over 1 million, a 95% decrease. In the evening, it was all slaps in the face. I'm not related to you, so why should I show you support? If the box office is good, will you give me even 1 cent? Show some support is a Beijing dialect phrase meaning to give face, and it's the most heartwarming greeting between acquaintances. Han Hong's intention was to appeal to the loyalty and sentiment of old Beijingers, calling on everyone to buy tickets and support the movie. In the past, with Han Hong's fame, those who liked her would surely say, sure, no problem, let's go in groups of 2 or 3 to see it. It's just 50 yuan, right? But now it's like the reaction of that actor Wang Leifeng just now. If you didn't charge money, I'd still go and show you support, but since you're charging me, I have to see if it's worth it. You see, while these big shots talk about sentiment on stage, they don't realize the people in the audience have long been clutching their wallets and doing the math. While Han Hong was being harshly criticized, a niche film with an all-amateur cast, an investment of only 14 million, and not even in Mandarin, quietly raked in 1.8 billion. Today, we'll start from this topic. This topic is currently trending very quickly and is very hot. Let's talk about the 40-year evolution of Chinese cinema. From Shaolin Temple at 10 cents, to Hero at 30 yuan, and now to I Know Who You Are at 50 yuan a ticket, why did Han Hong and Feng Xiaogong's face suddenly become worthless? The answer starts with 10 cents. In 1982 China, the average urban salary was about 40 yuan, while the countryside didn't even have a fraction of that. A pound of pork was 92 cents, and a pound of eggs was 68 cents. 10 cents could buy 2 popsicles or a box of matches. Also on February 1st of that year, a movie called Shaolin Temple began showing in theaters across the country. Ticket prices ranged from 10 cents to 30 cents, with most outdoor screenings in counties and villages charging 10 cents. In a poor mountain village at the foot of Mount Song in Hainan, before it was completely dark, with a bit of early spring chill still in the air, there was a Forever brand heavy iron bicycle, creaking along on a muddy dirt road. The cyclist is old Zhang, the only projectionist in the commune. He's wearing a faded Zhongshan suit, and 2 large iron boxes are tied tightly to the back seat with hemp rope. Inside are the heavy film reels of the Shaolin Temple, weighing over 20 pounds. An old generator that could stall at any moment hangs from the handlebars. He has to ride over 10 kilometers along this muddy road to show the movie in the next village. What he doesn't know is that people there started gathering at the threshing floor since yesterday afternoon. Young and old, carrying stools and straw mats. People from neighboring villages came too. 2 thick bamboo poles are stuck into the ground, with a yellowed white cloth stretched between them. The generator sputters out black smoke. With a roar, a beam of bright light hits the cloth. At that moment, thousands of people on the entire hillside all held their breath. Jet Li, in his monk's robes, delivered a flying kick that crashed into the childhood of an entire generation of Chinese people. When the movie finally ended and the film ran out, the clicking sound echoed in the night air. A sea of dark heads began moving homeward. Flashlight beams on the pitch-black field path stretched into an endless dragon of fire. On the way home, boys by the roadside were already shouting and gesturing, excitedly mimicking those moves from the Shaolin 18 kicks. Seems like this were playing out in every corner of China that year. In the end, the Shaolin Temple earned 161 million yuan at the box office. At an average of 0.2 yuan per ticket, that's 800 million people. At 0.1 yuan, it's 1.6 billion. Since China's population was just over a billion then, it means every Chinese person, from infants to the elderly, saw it more than once. Why? Because it was like a long-awaited rain after a cultural drought. At that time, China had only been out of the Cultural Revolution for 5 or 6 years. In 1982, the GDP was only 500 billion yuan. Material goods were scarce, and spiritual life was even scarcer. Televisions were rare. A village might have only one. Books were just a few well-worn copies passed around. Pop music was just starting to emerge alongside bell-bottom jeans. Back then, it wasn't that Chinese people didn't want to consume culture, but that there was simply nothing to consume. So that kick from Shaolin Temple was like kicking open a floodgate. Also, movies back then weren't very commercial. Cinemas were perks of public units, where state-owned enterprises gave out tickets for benefits or meetings. Making movies was a political task from above. Profit wasn't even on the minds of directors or actors. A 10-cent ticket wasn't about profit, it was about giving everyone a chance to see a show. This was the first major milestone in Chinese cinema history, in a simple China that was extremely starved for both material and spiritual fulfillment. A 10-cent movie ticket was a collective cultural catch-up for the entire nation. Let's fast forward 20 years to the night of February 14, 2002. At the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, a premiere was held for the first time in such a prestigious venue. The red carpet stretched to the door. Jet Li, Tony Leung, Maggie Cheung, Zhang Ziyi, Chen Doming, Donnie Yen, the most elite lineup in Chinese cinema stood side by side. That movie was called Hero. With a $30 million investment, it was worth 248 million yuan at the time. What does that actually mean? Before 2002, the biggest hits were Feng Xiaogong's signature comedies. If one earned 30 or 40 million at the box office, it was considered a massive success. Zhang Yimou's move was like taking the combined budget of 10 past New Year hits and pouring it all into this one film. But the real key was the ticket price. Back then, at top theaters in major cities like Wanda or Huaxing, a ticket for Hero cost 30 yuan. What did 30 yuan mean in those days? A single movie ticket was worth half a day's pay, and yet the audience was more than willing to pay. Let me set the scene for you. A young software engineer named Wang worked in an office in Beijing's Yongguangsun. He left work at 6 on a winter night, but instead of going home, he biked straight to the nearest theater. In the freezing wind, he waited in line at the ticket booth for an hour and a half. In line were college students, young couples, and middle-aged women in mink coats. Everyone was rubbing their hands and breathing out mist, but their eyes were full of excitement. This was a scene that hadn't been seen in Chinese cinemas for over a decade. Young Wang finally got his ticket. The next day at the office, he bragged to his colleagues, "Hey, I went to see Hero last night." In 2002, in cities like Beijing or Shanghai, this was a statement of status. At that time, watching a movie wasn't just leisure, it was a form of status symbol consumption. Ultimately, Hero earned over 248 million yuan domestically, a quarter of China's total box office in 2002. Abroad, it made 53 million in North America, with a global total of $177 million. To this day, no other Chinese film has broken that overseas record. Then came Zhang Yimou's House of Flying Daggers and Curse of the Golden Flower, Chen Kaigei's The Promise, and Feng Xiaogong's A Banquet. Period pieces, martial arts, huge budgets, and big stars. One blockbuster after another was released. Chinese cinema shifted from being a state-subsidized perk and officially entered the era of the blockbuster. What was happening in China at that time? Just 1 year after joining the WTO, China was officially pulled into the global capital market. In the 4th year of full real estate commercialization, myths of instant wealth from property began to spread. A massive wave of white-collar workers emerged in major cities, and the term middle class truly began to take root in China for the first time. In 2002, white-collar salaries were only about 2,000 yuan in Beijing and 3,000 in Shanghai. What kind of China was this? It was a China where everyone was chasing the next level up, buying houses, upgrading cars, going abroad, watching blockbusters. All consumption carried a sense of thriving energy. In Hero, the screen was filled with red, green, and white, a visual spectacle Zhang Yimou built with color. Behind it was the surge of hot money, the boom of Chinese real estate, and a time when the middle class was eager to show off their taste for a 30 yuan movie ticket. And Feng Xiaogong's New Year films like Big Shot's Funeral, Cell Phone, and A World Without Thieves also began to take root and emerge at this time. He used Geiyu's Beijing dialect to blend industry relationships into a cultural flavor. Big shots started appearing to support each other, help each other out, and call each other out, hey, just to save face. This set of Zhonghu rhetoric in that era of runaway capital was pampered, spoiled, and bolstered by both the market and capital. It was also during this period that Feng Xiaogong left a famous quote, "Trashy movies are everywhere because there are trashy audiences." Looking back at those words today, it's truly the height of irony. But back in those years, from 2002 to 2010, he really did have the confidence to say it. Because back then, audiences would actually buy into it. This was the second chapter in Chinese film history. 30 yuan tickets, hundreds of millions in box office. A China with a lot of superficial heat, propped up by capital and status. 15 years later, in July 2017, Wu Jing spent his own money to make a movie called Wolf Warrior 2. To be honest, before filming started, few people were optimistic. The term main melody was considered box office poison in the film market at that time. But Wolf Warrior 2 eventually earned 5.694 billion yuan at the box office, the first film in Chinese history to break 5 billion. Then came the 2021 Spring Festival season, with Zhao Ling's Hi Mom earning 5.413 billion. But you have to know, who pushed the box office that high? It wasn't the high-end white-collar workers in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Those cities only account for a fraction of the national population. They alone couldn't support a 5 billion yuan box office. It was supported by countless young people from small towns. Let me recreate a scene for you. One summer evening in 2017, in Human Town, Dongguan, Guangdong, a furniture factory assembly line had just finished work. A young man named Chen, who had worked at the factory for 2 years with a monthly salary of 4,500, rode his electric bike out the factory gate, went back to his rental, took a shower, put on a clean t-shirt, and headed to the town's only Wanda Plaza. Wanda Plaza is the place in the whole town that feels most like a city. Haidilao on the first floor, movies on the third. He and his girlfriend spent the money for 2 IMAX tickets, nearly 100 yuan, sitting in front of the giant screen watching Wu Jing blow up tanks. After the movie, he posted on his moments, "Anyone who offends China will be punished, no matter how far away they are," along with 9 photos. A similar scene was repeated on New Year's Day in 2021, in county towns in the northeast, small towns in Sichuan, and village entrances in Henan. 3 generations of a family finished their dumplings and headed together to the newly opened local county cinema to watch Jia Ling cry for her mother. When they came out, every middle-aged woman had red eyes. Movies shifted from being a middle-class symbol of Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. It's reached the collective consciousness of 3rd and 4th tier cities. So how did this happen? First, Chinese cinemas underwent a rapid expansion into smaller markets. From 2010 to 2019, the number of screens in China grew from 6,000 to over 70,000, an 11-fold increase. Wanda, CGV, Hengdian, these theater chains expanded even faster than China's high-speed rail. Every county seat got high-speed rail, and almost every county seat got a Wanda. Second, the Chinese economy underwent a true popularization. The urbanization rate rose from 40% to 60%. Incomes in 3rd and 4th tier cities began to rise, and for the first time, people had extra cash in their pockets. Third, and most importantly, the public needed an emotional outlet. What did Wolf Warrior 2 sell? It was the patriotic sentiment of a rising power. What did Hai Mom sell? It was the deep-seated maternal bond in Chinese families. At this point, movies were no longer just products. They were emotional products, like shots of emotional adrenaline. The underlying foundation for all this was that the economy was still growing. Housing prices were rising, and people saw more money in their pockets. They were willing to pay for emotions. You see, 40 years ago, for 10 cents, movies were about collective cultural catch-up. 20 years ago, for 30 yuan, they were status symbols for white-collar workers in major cities. 10 years ago, movies sold collective emotions. Each stage reflects a vivid slice of the Chinese economy, from scarcity to pursuit, and from pursuit to collective frenzy. Speaking of which, I'd like to ask you all, do you think the peak of China's box office occurs when the economy's booming, or when it's in a downturn? If you think a better economy means a higher box office because people have more time and money, type A. If you think a worse economy leads to a higher box office because movies are an escape from reality, and if you think it's unrelated to the economy and just depends on whether there are good movies, type C. But have you ever wondered what's at the end of the frenzy? A hangover. In 2023, China's annual box office was $55 billion, down from its 2019 peak of $64.2 billion. In 2024, it fell further to $42.5 billion, a one-third drop from 2019, even lower than the $40 billion in 2015. Back then, the number of theaters and screens was less than half of what it is now. In 2025, the total reached $51.8 billion, but out of that, Ne Zha 2 alone contributed over $15 billion. One movie accounted for more than 30% of the annual box office. If you take Ne Zha out, the actual market base for 2025 is only $36.4 billion. What does that mean? It's a regression to the levels of 2014, 10 years ago. Look at the occupancy rate. Around 2014, the average occupancy rate in theaters nationwide was about 15%. That's 15 people for every 100 seats. In 2024, it was only 5.7%. Only 5 people for every 100 seats. In March 2025, the average attendance per screening nationwide dropped to 1.08 people. That means there's only 1 viewer per movie screening. Theater owners are even wondering if they should even turn on the projectors. The 2026 Lunar New Year period, usually the busiest time of year, saw occupancy drop to 22.5%. Compared to over 50% the previous year, it's been cut right in half. Looking at theater closures in China, 80% of cinemas nationwide had annual box office sales under 5 million in 2024. 5 million sounds like a lot, but when spread over 365 days, the average cinema only brings in 13,000 per day. But between utilities, rent, and labor costs, a theater burns through over 10,000 a day on average. Looking at closures, Wanda lost $900 million in 2024, a 200% increase in losses. Jinny Media shut down 12 directly operated theaters at once. Hengdian, Happiness Blue Sea, and Bona, all these listed theater chains lost money in 2024. By 2025, a wave of closures became the industry's new normal. Now let's look at Blockbusters. This is the most heartbreaking part. In 2025, 22 domestic blockbusters with budgets over $100 million were released. Only 6 of them were profitable. The failure rate was as high as 72%. Of those 16 losing films, 13 lost more than half their investment. In the industry, this is called losing your shirt. In contrast, the failure rate for blockbusters in 2019 was only 33%. Let me give you another specific example. Bona Film Group, which produced The Bottle at Lake Changjin and Operation Red Sea. Its boss, Yu Dong, is known in the industry as the mainstream melody mogul. Over the past decade, thanks to hits like Operation Mekong, The Captain, Chinese Doctors, and Lake Changjin, he's made a fortune. Lake Changjin alone contributed $1 billion in profit. For the 2025 Lunar New Year, Yu Dong made an even bigger bet, investing 1 billion yuan in the sequel to Operation Red Sea, Operation Haddle. That's 5 times the production cost of the first film. The crew even built a full-scale 120-meter-long replica of the Dragon Whale nuclear submarine. During the promotional tour, Yu Dong vowed he would never pull the film from theaters. But after 17 days, it only made $378 million. It was dead last among the 6 holiday releases, so he had to pull it. A special edition was re-released, but it ultimately lost $855 million, becoming the biggest box office disaster of 2025. And this wasn't Bona's first loss. In 2022, they lost $72 million. In 2023, it jumped to $553 million. In 2024, $881 million. In 2025, they lost nearly $1.1 billion. Since returning to the A-share market in 2022, in just 3.5 years, Bona has accumulated losses of nearly $2.4 billion. And it's at this critical juncture that Feng Xiaogang's I Know Who You Are was released. Veteran director, veteran actors, and a familiar theme, spies and underground agents during the war. With an investment of hundreds of millions, it stars Li Jiayan, Hu Gei, and others. At the Beijing premiere, Huang Lei, Xu Fan, and Wang Heilin all showed up to show support. This is a classic combo of a patriotic theme and old money in film. Compared to 5 years ago, that $200 million target would be a piece of cake. But audiences aren't going to theaters now. Han Hong's shout-out for Feng Xiaogang to give him some face was well-intentioned, but she didn't realize that times have changed. Back when the economy was booming and people had money in their pockets, everyone was willing to spend 50 yuan at the theater to buy some face, a status symbol, an experience, or even a bowl of grand narrative emotional stimulants. But those days are gone. When the real estate wealth myth shattered, when the age 35 threshold at big tech companies became a survival crisis, when everyone is penny pinching for next month's mortgage and the little bit of change they have left, It's not that people don't love movies anymore. It's that they're no longer willing to pay for pointless patriotic hype and empty bubbles. Against this earth-shattering backdrop, Han Hong's plea to give some face not only failed to get any, but instead became an elegy for the collective exit of China's old-school filmmakers. So when face exits and the economy stalls, in an era where no one wants to part with their money easily, what can truly move an audience? An answer was provided in a movie released at the same time. It turns out a grandmother waited 40 years at the village entrance for her husband, who left for Thailand. She thought he'd struck it rich and had a change of heart, not knowing he'd passed away in a foreign land long ago. What's even more tear-jerking is that for the past 18 years, the person sending money on time and writing letters in the husband's name to say he's safe was actually a Thai woman who had never even met the grandmother. This movie has nothing to do with patriotic themes, big IPs, or idol stars. It's about the human heart, about the most sincere emotions, the purest altruism, and a simple kindness given willingly to a stranger. This is the rarest and most heartwarming thing in this era, and this is what truly moves audiences today, a spiritual cleansing that they're willing to pay for. Alright, that's all for today. If you have anything to say, feel free to leave a comment and share it with me. 40 years of film history have witnessed the changes in China's era. This is a poignant past and a historic moment that sparks the imagination. I'm sure many of you are feeling deeply moved right now. What do you want to say? What memories did these movies evoke for you? Please share them in the comments. I'll read every single one. Thanks for watching, everyone. Before you go, please do me a small favor and give me a like. New viewers, welcome to subscribe to Real Viewpoint, and please share my show with more friends. Every interaction helps trigger YouTube's recommendation algorithm, helping my voice reach further. And don't forget to click that hype button, the hot recommendation feature, to help spread my video faster. Thank you all for your encouragement. Alright, that's it for today. We'll see you again this Saturday on Real Viewpoint. Be there or be square. Bye-bye.